All right, guys. Welcome back. It's the first video I've done in a while. Um, I've got a few requests through email about doing some more updated videos. I have a little bit of time, so I figured I'd throw one in there. And what I wanted to do is I picked out a past performance from the past. This is actually, let me see if I can find the date on somewhere on here. Sunday, December 11th, 2022. I didn't want to go and purchase any daily racing forums or anything to do a video. So what I did was I just took the actual digital DRF that I downloaded back on this date, and I'm looking at a race that I actually didn't play back then. And really, the theme of this video here is um, being specific as far as what type of races you're looking for. I mean, the word compulsive can be defined many ways when it comes to gambling. Okay, and one way it can be defined when it comes to horse racing is betting on every single race that comes along. Okay, that's in my mind, that's how I would define compulsive when it comes to horse racing. Now, I do realize there are multi-wager players out there that play pick fives and pick fours, pick sixes, and you have no choice. You can't pick and choose. You're playing those 5 or 6 races in a row. Okay, so hopefully you're handicapping the factors that you look at, your methodology. Hopefully it's suitable. It suits playing any race that comes along, or else you're going to be in trouble. You're going to be. It's going to be a crapshoot every time you try to play these multi-leg wagers because it's going to be, not every race is made up the same. Like for example, if you're somebody who relies heavily on like jockey trainer connections and workouts and pedigree, all those items I just mentioned are all found in every kind of race. Every race you look at, if you open up the DRF and you just point your finger at a race, you're going to find a jockey, a trainer on every horse. You're going to find pedigree. You're also going to find workouts. And if that's all you look for, and hey, you know what? You can play whatever race you want. But the factors that I look at in the matrix system force me to make sure that I'm a little selective on what races I play and what races I pass. And what I look for races that meet my schematic, we'll call it. Okay, they meet my schematic. That they know the things I'm looking for, and that's why I chose this race right here. Okay, Aqueduct Eighth here on this date. It's a 6 furlong race. If I'm betting multiple tracks in one day, which I normally do, because again I pick and choose my races, I like to look for 6 furlong and 1 mile races. Why? Because 6 furlong is the standard sprint distance, and 1 mile is a standard um, route distance. Most tracks. Okay, you got tracks like Aqueduct here. Yeah, I realize it's a mile, 1 turn mile. The outer dirt. Gulfstream is a 1 turn mile, but usually what the tracks that have 2 turn miles, the mile is a standard distance, and so is the 6 furlong. And I'm going to show you why. It's standard in terms of my methodologies because I base my target ratings and I base my ability ratings off of the 6 furlong mark. Okay, so if I'm basing off a rating off of the 6 furlong mark, I'm actually looking right at the horse's finish in order to get that rating. Okay, same thing with the final fractions. The final fractions for 6 furlongs are cut and dry. They go from the half to the finish. That's 1 full quarter. Okay, you start dealing with 6.5 furlong races now. Now you're pulling. You're not pulling it. You're not pulling that final fraction from. It's not finishing where the horse ends. It's still the half to the 3 quarters, but this horse still has a 16th left to run in a 6.5 furlong race. So that's where it gets a little tricky, where the numbers might get skewed a little bit, and they might not be as reliable. So I'm going to show you what I do when I find one of these races that I like, that fits my schematic. The first thing I do is I go and I try to make every horse where I'm looking at 6 furlongs only. Okay, so if you take a look at this, look at the races I crossed off. I crossed off a 5.5 furlong. I crossed off another 5.5. I crossed off another 5.5, and I crossed off a 4.5, which leaves me with 3 6 furlong sprints to look at. That's plenty for me to get my numbers from. Okay, especially when there's no comments over here saying, bad trip, stumbled at the start, clipped heels, and so on. I'm looking at 3 races where the horse had a clear run, and I can get an idea of how he ran. If I look at number 2, there was only one race I tossed, and that was the 6 furlong on the turf. Again, keep in mind, if today's race is on the dirt, we don't want to be looking at turf form. And then here you might say, well, why did you leave this 7 furlong and 6.5 in? I left it in there just in case it was a very good race and I need to pull an ability rating from it. But notice what I did was I crossed off the last call because this is further than today's race. This race ends, today's distance ends here and here. This is the 6 furlong mark, okay, or the top of the stretch, which is close enough to 6 furlongs. So that's what I would go by. So if you notice, I have all 6 furlong finishes here. Third race, I left them all in there except for I crossed the last call off of the 7 furlong. Here I crossed off some 5.5 furlongs, and then I crossed off the last call of the 7 furlong. And now the next thing you're probably asking is, why are you leaving that 5.5 furlong on top? Well, the reason I'm doing it is I need to pull a target rating off some sort of recent race. If I had to reach all the way back here, this is December of 22. I would have to reach all the way back to September of 22 in order to get that, 2 months to get that target rating when he's run actually 3 times since then. So what I would do is, if those of you that are familiar with the target rating, instead of using a 108 for the 6 furlongs that I use as the standard, I use a 102. So this would be 12 ticks, 2 seconds and 2/5. That 102, that would be a 10, 11, 12, and he was in first. That would be an 88 target rating on this horse. Okay, and then I would just take it. But again, the more you have to do that for multiple horses, the more you're going to skew your data, okay? Because you're not getting your figures off the true distance that they're running today. But being that you're going to see this is the only horse that I'm having that issue with, so I'm not going to toss this race because of one horse. Same thing here, 6.5 furlongs. It was in the lead at 6 furlongs, and it won the race. So I just tossed this last call off. I tossed a half a furlong off. And I'm going to use the 15 or 111. That would be a 15, 111, 3. That would be 18. That would be an 82 target rating for me. Again, I tossed off the calls that have nothing to do with today's distance. Okay? And you got to familiarize yourself with that. You got to know that a mile race, the third call is actually the 6 furlong call. Okay? That's the 3/4. This is the top of the stretch, and that is the finish for the mile. And number 6, same thing. I left the 5.5 furlong race up here so I can get a target rating, something recent, or else I would have to go all the way back to July, and that's more of an ability indicator, this race way back here, than it would be a target indicator. Number 7, I had to toss most of them. In fact, I was almost ready to strike this horse out and just say, the hell with this horse. Especially when I see 30-1. But you know what? It does leave a 6 furlong race recently in there. And I also have a 6 furlong call from this 7 furlong race that I can use for ability as well. So I'm going to leave those 2 in there when I do my work. Number 8, same thing. The only thing I'm going to get from this horse, I might as well strike it out, is an ability rating. Because we have the rest of these races were run on turf. This one, even though it was 2 back, you might say, well, that's kind of recent. Well, you got to look at the date. You got a layoff mixed in there, plus another race. That was all the way in February of 22. Okay, so that was, 10 months? 10 or 11 months almost. So I can't say this is a recent rating. So the only thing I'd be able to get off of here would be an ability rating, and maybe I'd pull the final fraction from that race to see how, how it fared. Number 9, same thing. I think you guys are starting to get the gist now. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a picture of where I'm looking at just 6 furlongs and nothing else on the dirt. Number 10, there was one race I had to strike out, and then 2 calls down here at the mile that I had to strike out. And finally, number 11, I left it all there, every race except for the 4 strikeouts here at the 6.5 distance and the 7 distance. Okay, so that would be one of the things I would look at in my initial scan to paint me a little better picture of what I'm looking at. Now, just to look at a few other items before I pause and I move on to doing some other steps. Some of the other things I identified some workouts. And what I look for when I do workouts, when I look at workouts, and I don't put workouts at the top of my list, but when I make an elaborate chart, sometimes I will put a column that has workouts, and if it falls into one of these categories I'm about to show you, I just put a little plus in that column, the workout column. If we have a 3 furlong workout and it's at 36 seconds or below or faster, I'll identify it. Okay. If it's a 4 furlong workout, like the one you're seeing right here, and it's 48 seconds or faster, it gets highlighted. 5 furlong workout, it's under a minute or a minute or under. That would be, 1 minute or faster. I identify that. And then finally, at 6 furlongs, if I see a 6 furlong workout at 112, faster, I identify that. That's as far as I go with workouts. I mean, there's more you can do. I know there's books out there on workouts. There's people that handicap solely on the workout sheets. They look simply at the horse's latest workouts and who they worked out against, and they compare the times, and they look at who that horse ran against and what that horse has done in his past or her past, most recently, and all kinds of stuff. I mean, there's a whole system out there you could do to what do you call it? To use workouts. So if you look at some of the other ones I identified, here's a 4 furlong at 48 seconds. And they've got a couple bullet works here, but again, it was that day. It was the top out of 11 horses that ran the 4 furlong workout at Finger Lakes, but 49-1, nothing special, so I didn't identify it. Here's a 47-3. This is a good 4 furlong workout. Third out of 85 runners that day that trained at that distance, and I think that's it. No, one more, another 4 furlong at 48. Okay, and then the only other thing I identified on here, I identified the early speed, and we'll start from the top here. I got some pressers here, nothing yet, and I have other videos that show how to, find what I'm looking for here if you're kind of lost. Here's one right here. Okay, there's a 47-1, so I identified it. Horse was in the lead at the quarter and at the half. Same thing here, quarter, half, 45-1. And when you look at all these that I identified, this horse here has the top halftime, and it's actually fresh too. It's off its last race, even though it was 5.5 furlongs. That doesn't really matter simply because it's still one turn. It's a sprint. Both of these races today have a half mile. So I'm going to consider that a valid source here, and I'm going to identify this horse as a pace setter. Today's race, okay? When I see a pace setter, first thing I'll look for to see if he's dropping in class, which in this case he's not. He's moving up big time in class. This is a $75,000 allowance at Aqueduct, and this horse is coming out of Finger Lakes. Um, Optional claimer of 15K. Before that, it was optional claimer 8K. So that class right there, that's another thing to keep in mind. That class right there, and especially the Finger Lakes horses compared to the Aqueduct horses, and the class of the races, might not even allow him to get out of the gate quicker than possibly this 10 right here, who's coming from better circuits, Laurel, Delaware, running for better prices, 25,000, 20,000. Even though the 10 is a tough, post to get the lead in. I mean, it happens. I'm sure you've all seen it before. It's not like just because he's running out of the 10 post, there's no way the horse gets the lead. But sometimes they have to use a little more energy than they would normally to get there. And the tail end of the race, the horse suffers in the tail end of the race. So those are the things I identified. And finally, I was looking for some horses that are coming out of key races. I looked at any horses in italics over here, which again are telling you that the horse won its next time out. Okay, and I didn't have any with multiples. If there's any with two of the three, so every race tells you the top three finishers in that race. And if there's any horses that have the top three finishers where at least two of the three are in italics, it means they came out and they won their next race, which kind of tells you that this race, that race there that he ran, might have been a little stronger of a race than normal. If these horses are now coming out and winning their next time out, especially if they didn't win that particular time. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause for a second and kind of gather my thoughts and see how much more I want to dig into this particular race. I do want to cover a little bit of target rating, ability rating, and final fraction. I'm not going to sit here and do all 11 horses step by step, but I'm going to pick out a few. That way you have a general idea. Instead of having to dig back and one of my older videos to find out how to do this stuff. And then keep in mind below in the comments, you'll see a link to my digital tutorial titled The Matrix System of Handicapping. You can get it for $8.99 off a Stripe, and it gets right to the point. Okay, I know there's a lot of books out there that you read, and I'm not saying that there's not good nuggets of information in there. I own about 15 handicapping books. But, sometimes you got to dig through those stories that the author tells about this time when he was at the track and when he ran into his brother-in-law or when he ran into his friend and they were talking about this particular horse. And you got to kind of read between the lines. I realize some people enjoy that, okay? But me, I personally like to pick up a handicapping book that kind of just, I want the approach, all right, show me what you do in the past performances. Show me what you look at. And this tutorial that I have, that I'm giving you little bits and pieces on from this video, does just that. It just jumps right into things to look for that you can add to your own handicapping methodology. Okay, so I will return and I will do some few of these horses. If I can figure out here how to, I might have to just, I'm going to have to roll right into it. I don't see a pause here for me. Okay, so let's just look at number one. Let's get a target rating off the number one. And again, I go off the 6 Furlong time, which is the final time. I use 108 as a standard. And for every second off of 108, it's 5 points. And because there's 5 fifths, I go by fifths. So for every second off of 108, that's going to be 5 points. And then for every fifth of a second off of 108, it's going to be 1 point. So if you look at this, we have a 113 flat, which is 5 seconds off of 108. Okay. So 5 times 5 is 25. I subtract that from 100, which would be a 75. So this horse's target rating would be a 75. Okay. And then my ability rating, I usually throw that over here. I do the same thing and I look for the best number. So here we have 112 and 4, which is actually 4 and 4/5, which is alpha 8 off of a 108. So that's a 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 24. And then he was one length out of first. So that's one more. That's a 25. So that's also a 75. And let's see this one up here. 15, that would be 3 seconds off, right? 111, 15, 16, 17, 18. That's at 82. So that's better. So his ability rating is actually at 82. And then we'll pull a final fraction off this last race, which is a 46.3 to 113. Now, this is where you really, really need to fine tune your mental math. And the more you do this, believe me, trust me, if if you're inclined to numbers at all, if you were in the past, it'll come back to you. When I first started doing this, I was doing this on paper for every single horse. I was writing it down, doing the math, using a calculator when I could, because it's difficult to use a calculator to figure out times that are in fifths of seconds. So I was doing everything on paper, and it got to a point where I could do this in my head. In fact, I'm going to do this in my head really quick right now, and then I'll show you what I did. 46 and 3, that's a 13 and 2, plus another 13 is a 26 and 2, and it gained 3 lengths, 26 and 1, 26. That's a 25 and 4 final fraction for this horse. Well, how did I get to 25 and 4? Well, 46 and 3 from a minute, when we're dealing with fifths of seconds, 46 and 3. How many more seconds do I need to reach a minute? Well, I need 13.2, or 13 and 2/5 would be 1 minute. So that's 13 and 2, plus another 13 seconds over a minute. So that'd be 26 and 2. And then what I do is I look for lengths gained or lost. In this instance, it went from 2.5 lengths out to crossing the line a length ahead. So that 2.5 plus a half is 3 total. So what I would do is I would subtract 3 from that to come out with a 25 and 4 final fraction on that race. And I really wish I could figure out why this isn't pausing, this video program that I use, so I could pause and do the rest of them and come back to you and maybe take a look at the result of this race. But in this case, let's do that with another race at some point when I figure out why I can't pause. And then let's leave it at that. That's really what I wanted to go over in this video. And if you have any questions, please throw them in the comments below. And again, the link for my tutorial, my digital tutorial, which is in a PDF format, can be found down there as well. Okay? Thanks.